Just like with underwriting and recorded announcements, one of the major differences between a non commercial station like KANW and commercial stations is that our announcers are prohibited by the FCC from issuing any calls to action, including price information. A call to action is when an announcer asks, urges, or suggests that the listener perform a task that could result in the benefit of a for profit business. For example, urging a listener to shop at a certain store, eat at a certain restaurant, buy a certain product, or mentioning the price of a product or service. Announcers' content should be informational in nature. This call to action rule does not apply when you are referencing the station itself or a nonprofit organization. And just like you and I as citizens, the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution prohibits the FCC from censoring broadcast material and interfering with the freedom of speech and expression in broadcasting. Individual stations are responsible for selecting all broadcast material and determining how to best serve the community. However, it is a violation of federal law for a station or announcer to air obscene language or content. Obscene language is not protected by the First Amendment and cannot be broadcast at any time. The U.S. Supreme Court has established that to be obscene, the material must have all of the following three characteristics. It must appeal to an average person's prurient interest, meaning it's lewd, lustful, or vulgar. The material must depict or describe sexual conduct in a patently offensive way, and the material, taken as a whole, must lack serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific value. A station or announcer cannot air indecent language or profanity when children are likely to be in the audience. Indecent language is protected by the First Amendment and cannot be outlawed, but it is restricted between the hours of 6 a.m. and 10 p.m. when there is a higher chance of a child in the listening audience. The hours between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. are considered safe harbor, during which broadcasters may legally transmit material deemed indecent or offensive. Indecent content portrays sexual or excretory organs or activities in a way that is patently offensive but does not meet the three-pronged test for obscenity. Profanity is defined as language so grossly offensive to members of the public who actually hear it as to amount to a nuisance and is sexual or excretory in nature or derived from such terms. In 2006, the FCC raised the maximum penalty from $32,500 to $325,000 per violation or per instance for broadcasting indecent material. A station or announcer cannot solicit money under false pretenses. For example, if a station conducted an on air fundraising campaign asking for money for a new transmitter, but actually used it to send station administration to attend business conferences or purchased a new broadcast van, they would be in violation of this rule. Another major infraction is if the station or announcer fails to fully disclose proper sponsorship identification, otherwise known as payola and plagola. Payola is the unreported payment to or acceptance by employees of broadcast stations, program producers, or program suppliers of any money, service, or valuable consideration in return for airplay. In other words, the announcer or program director receives some form of compensation in exchange for airplay, like cash, concert tickets, vacation packages, electronics, drugs, prostitutes, etc., for playing a record. Payola is a crime punishable by 1 year in prison and a fine of up to $10,000. Plagola is the plugging or mentioning of products, events, venues, or services not paid for or underwritten by a sponsor. For example, the announcer or program director gives extra or special on air promotion for something in which they have a financial interest. A station can get in trouble for airing unlawful advertising for or unlawful information concerning a lottery. A lottery is any game, contest, or promotion that contains the three elements of prize, chance, and consideration. A prize is anything of value offered to a contestant, can also be in the form of a discount or refund. Chance is when the prize is awarded to someone whose selection is determined in whole or in part upon chance rather than the person's skill. Consideration is when a contestant is required to furnish money or something of value, or is required to have in their possession any product sold or distributed by a sponsor of a program broadcast on the station. However, a tribal, nonprofit, commercial, or other state authorized lottery is allowed. Along similar lines, a station cannot conduct false, misleading, or deceptive contests with respect to the description, terms, operation, participation, prizes, or how winners are selected. Contests must not place participants in any danger or jeopardize property. For example, awarding prizes to the first 5 people to scale a treacherous mountain or swim a channel filled with alligators would definitely be construed by the FCC as endangering the lives of the participants. A station in California that ran a treasure hunt resulting in considerable property damage incurred the wrath of the public, town officials, and the FCC. A more tragic example was when a listener was killed during a Find the DJ contest. The station was charged with negligence and sustained a substantial fine. Contest rigging, meaning determining winners in advance, is also strictly prohibited. A station or announcer may not air false information concerning a crime or catastrophe known as a broadcast hoax, especially if such communications may cause substantial public harm. Public harm includes direct and actual damages to people or property and the diversion of law enforcement or public health and safety authorities from their duties. So if a caller tells you to announce a bomb threat, kidnapping, murder, natural disaster, etc., you may not announce it unless you are absolutely sure the information is true. Always get approval from station management before even thinking of making such an announcement. Although the laws of libel, slander, defamation of character, and invasion of privacy are governed by individual state law and are not enforced by the FCC, stations and announcers should be cognizant of some general principles in this area and should avoid on air remarks that are potentially libelous or which violate another's privacy. Libel is a false statement of fact concerning a person or group which tends to injure their reputation. Invasion of privacy includes intrusion upon the solitude of another, public disclosure of embarrassing private facts, publicity that shows a person in a false light, and appropriation of a person's name or likeness for commercial advantage. It is always best to err on the side of caution and refrain from airing potentially libelous material or establish and confirm the facts through careful reporting before the material is aired. And if a station fails to air legal station identification at the top of each hour, a rule violation has been committed. The legal ID must contain the station's call letters followed by its city of license. The top of the hour is the time at or very close to the start of the next hour, like 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, and so on. The legal ID window is generally between 5 minutes till and 5 minutes after each hour, but most stations' legal IDs air right near the top. Those are the most notable rule violations for a station and its announcers. So, how is the FCC alerted to possible rule violations? Well, that usually comes from complaints by the public. And now, with most stations streaming on the internet, it is much easier for the FCC to monitor a broadcast. FCC sanctions and penalties for violations include formal warnings, significant monetary fines, prison time for announcers, and ultimately license revocations.